Hello again. In this section of the videos, we're going to talk about the construction of the table itself. That is, the wooden elements of the design that are going to give it its function as the coffee table. I'm going to talk about the glass top later. Right now I'm just going to focus on the wooden elements. And the design of the table really has several objectives. The first is to be as low in the room as possible. The platform itself wasn't originally designed as a coffee table, but it actually converts to a coffee table quite easily. And this one is about 18 inches tall, which is within the range of what a coffee table is. My wife wishes it was 17 inches tall, which you could do, but this one's 18, and I've made all my tables 18 for a couple of important reasons. One is, this is as low as the glass top can get, and it is about 7 inches to the top of the glass. It can't go any lower because there's obviously artwork inside that it has to be a certain height. I also wanted to have at least 6 inches of clearance under the floor for your feet to get underneath, for the dog's tennis balls to roll underneath, and enough room for you to get a vacuum under it. And even the cat can get underneath there. So I wanted to have at least 6 inches for feet and other things to get under there. I didn't want it to be any lower than that. So with 6 inches underneath, with just the gap for the platform itself and the glass top, you end up with about 18 inches. You could probably get 17 if you want, by changing the 6-inch gap underneath. So that was one of the big objectives. The second objective, which for me may have been even more important, was to make the table sturdy. It's a coffee table. It's going to be in your family room or in some other room. It's going to get abuse, right? There's people who are going to fall on it. People are going to sit on it. The dog's going to jump on it. People are going to spill stuff on it. It's going to get lived in, and so it has to be sturdy. And the platform itself isn't all that strong. It's made out of some mystery Chinese material. I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's not quite wood. It's not quite paper. It's something in between, and it's not. And you'll probably notice on your table, if you look closely, it's actually warped a little bit, and it will continue to do that unless you strengthen it. And so in this design, the strength comes from two parts. The main strength of the piece comes from underneath of it, and I'll show you later. There's a big plywood stiffening board underneath. Same thing they use for flooring, 3/4 inch flooring material. That's underneath the table, and that's what's giving it its strength, and that's what the leg's attached to. But the strength also comes from the sides. These sides are 1x6 oak, which is really 3/4 inch by 5.5 inch oak. These are very firmly attached to the platform. These are going to give us its torsional stiffness. So between the wooden base and the oak on the sides, that's what's going to give us all its strength. I really feel strongly about that, because you don't want to have this thing in your living room, have somebody sit on it or fall on it and have it collapse or break in half or something, because that would be bad for your collection. So it's got to be strong. There are a couple of other elements of the design of this table I want to point out. Here, it's not easy to see, but here you can see that underneath the plexiglass is the original platform edge, and now you can see the additional 1x6 oak that's been wrapped around it. But you'll see that the plexiglass actually drops in between the oak and the platform on top of the original base. This actually holds the plexiglass top firmly in place so it can't slide around. And this becomes a bigger issue on the back of the piece, which I'll show you. All right, we're looking at the back corner of the platform around the castle. And you'll notice that the plexiglass top is now dropped into this channel and is firmly held in place here in the platform. And that's a very important consideration for the top, because if this wasn't here, the plexiglass top could be pushed back and slide off the platform. Let me show you. Right, you can see on the front of the piece that there is nothing preventing the top from sliding that way. If you didn't have this oak piece on the side holding the top where it is, that someone could push on the plexiglass this way and it would slide back. In fact, I saw this on the gallery piece a couple of times where a guest or a cast member had bumped against the front of the piece and it slid this way and sheared off all of the items in front of this part of the platform. So I built up this edge, wrapped it all the way around to hold the plexiglass piece right where it is, so it can't move. And for me, that was an important consideration, just to make sure you didn't destroy the entire front of your piece if somebody, like my dog, bumped against it and knocked it over. So with that, I'll start going into the construction of the piece. There's really three parts of the construction. There's the building of the sides, the building of the bottom, and then the building of the legs. So let's go through those. All right, so you've heard me go through a description of what the table looks like when it's done, and so I'm going to give you some pointers on assembly. And I'm assuming you already know how to use shop tools and you can cut the wood appropriately. Otherwise, this video would be even longer. So I'm just going to talk about how all the pieces integrate together. And you probably can already see that my platform has already gone through some changes. Just to orient you, that's the train station right there, and we're looking at the side. This would be the, let's see, north, south. This would be the east side of the table. No, I'm sorry, west side of the table. And I've cut this notch out of the side, and the reason why I did that is because later we're going to be installing the stereo system in the platform. This is about the most compact stereo system I could find that has good power, good clarity, and control, and USB, and all that kind of stuff. I'll talk about the audio later, but it's going to go in here, and so you obviously have to cut this notch out before you attach the sides. You'll also notice that this part of the platform is now green. This part of the platform comes in orange, or that pinkish color, and the pinkish color just doesn't look right against the oak siding, so I painted that green. You won't even really see it when it's all assembled that much, but I think it just adds that orange piece was distracting if you didn't paint it. And I don't know if you can see it in the video very well, but there in the siding, I've cut these grooves. You see one of them there, and that will serve as a drain to the siding, because when this is done, you're going to have this channel that the plexiglass is going to fit into. And it is a coffee table after all, and people are going to spill things, and other stuff happens. And so if fluids did get down in here, they have to get out. And so that's why we've got these little channels in here. They obviously don't go all the way to the top; they just stop right about there. And this way, the fluids can get in and then drain out and come out the bottom of the table. Let's see, fastening it. I'm not really a carpenter. I'm not a woodworker, but I can get around a shop okay. But for me, fastening this thing, the fastening is important because the platform itself is not very strong. And when we fasten this thing together, the oak is actually going to provide a lot of strength to the table. I think I mentioned that before. And for that, we're going to use a lot of glue. Industrial strength, woodworking glue. And I also have a set of screws that are going to be in place. The screws are going to become helpful later too as we adjust the corners. So we have several screws on the side. We have the heavy duty glue, and that's what's going to bond these pieces to the side. And so with that, I'm going to get started and glue this thing up. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's done, and give you some more little adjustment pointers there when I get the sides on. Now I've got the sides that I finished cutting and attaching to the sides have been attached to the platform, and in this shot it's a little bit easier to see. That's the original edge of the base of the platform that came with the platform, and then of course this is the 3/4 inch 1x6 oak piece that's been attached to it, and it's a little bit easier now to see that trough that was created specifically for the top to fit into, and so that's how that looks. And I just miter the corners of this so that this oak strip keeps going all the way around the piece. It's very easy to design, simple. You know, I'm trying to keep the whole, I mean, the zen of this is to keep the table as low profile as possible, to keep it as you know, very as invisible as possible, to draw everybody's attention to the collection and not to the table. So that's why it's a fairly simple design, and why I like to keep things that way. I mean, after all, it really is all about the collection and not about the table, after all. Now in this shot you can see the cutout that I made for the control panel. I have not put the switches in yet, but I've got the stereo in here, so you can see how that looks. This, of course, is the side of the original platform base, which we are, of course, going to use as the backdrop for the control panel. That's really it for the sides. You know, you just cut out this 1x6 or the 3/4 by 5.5, and you put the sides on. Next, I'll show you where the base goes. The bottom of the piece goes. Okay, so now in these shots, I'm actually underneath the table. I'm going to show you how the bottom attaches. But first, I'm going to show you just how I work on the platform. That I put the platform on top of this fabulous old box, and it gives me access to the entire underside of the table and gets it up off the floor enough to work. And you can see how that all looks. So that for me has worked out pretty good for building these things, because you're going to be spending a lot of time underneath them when you start installing the electronics and the tree lights. So now let's talk about the platform. This of course is the original platform that you received. And you can see the original side here with this weird cutout. I don't know why that's there. I filled this one with a little plug because you can see it through the control panel, which is on the other side, and you can see the back of the stereo system here. So the switches are all going to go here, but the reason why I'm underneath here showing you this is that this is the oak siding that's come down about 7/8 of an inch from the bottom of the bottom of the original platform. Now this has been extended down so that I can take a piece of plywood and put it right up against the bottom of the original base. So when I install the bottom, and I'll show you that in a second, when I install the bottom, it's going to go right flush to the edge of the oak, and it's going to be resting right under the edge of the original platform. And so in effect the plywood is going to be holding up the edge of the plywood and all the other contact points underneath the original base, and that's what's going to give it a large part of its strength, is that plywood pushing up, you know, sitting in this gap, sitting right in this slot area here. Maybe this is a little better angle for you to see it. See the edge of the original panel here, and so that the plywood is just going to sit right up in there, and we screw it in place. So that's where the plywood goes. And again, my whole agenda here is to keep things simple, strong, low profile. And so with that, let's go look at the bottom. Here's the bottom of the table laid out on my garage floor. It's basically one big piece of plywood cut down to 30 inches by 72 inches. I've cut it in the middle just to make accessing the underneath the table easier if you need to get underneath there for some reason. And you'll also notice that there's speaker holes that have been left in the ends, and those are there for the speakers to be dropped into so that they're recessed. So obviously you had to build a recessed mount for the speakers here. I'll show you that in a second. And the speakers fit in. Now the speakers themselves are a pretty tricky choice. The tricky bit of the speakers is they have to be very high quality speakers to do justice to the collection, and they have to be very thin, very shallow, because you'd only have about 2 inches to work with up underneath the table. And I've settled on these. These are Kicker DS65s. You can use any speaker that has a 2 inch or less depth. but I just happen to like these for this job, and they're very reliable. And I'll show you how the mount looks in a second. Here's the back of the mount. It's just a real quick piece of plywood just glued and screwed into the base itself. You have to be a little careful with this piece because there's two support arms in the bottom of the piece that are right next to this thing. So be careful not to make this too wide, otherwise it won't fit in there. Oh yeah. Also, make sure that you remember to leave the half-inch gap here for the table support to clear this piece. That's the reason why there's a gap there. All right. So you've seen the bottom, and now, last but certainly not least, are the legs. And the legs have to be especially strong. That the table, when it's finished, is going to weigh about 300 pounds. You put somebody sitting on it, you're 400, 450 pounds. It's going to be quite heavy. And so I've designed the legs just to be sturdy. That the center of the leg is literally a piece of 4x4. That is the core strength of the legs. I've used the same oak 1x6 siding to wrap the 4x4, and you can see you don't even really need to miter the edges so long as your cuts are close. So you can see the seams here that actually look fine when it's finished. And then of course you just wrap this with a decorative molding edge just to make it look good. On mine, I equipped them with wheels the wheels extend down past the bottom by about half an inch so that you can still use them on carpet, and it still looks okay on a normal hardwood floor or oak floor. You may be sure to use a caster that's strong enough. These are 150-pound casters. You don't want to go much lower than that. In this case, the caster was large enough that I had to router out some grooves in the oak to make clearance for them to spin. And of course you can see the bottom of the 4x4 here. So it's a simple design. It's quite effective. It looks good. Of course, since the thing is so heavy, you're really in trouble without the wheels. Just make sure you get wheels that are strong enough. So you're just gonna literally screw these to the plywood base I showed you, the bottom. Then you're going to screw the bottom into the bottom of the table, and then your table is complete. I typically don't do all the assembly of the bottom and the wheel and the legs and the everything else until the very last step when I'm ready to do the final assembly, because we have so much work to do underneath the table. So with that, that's pretty much all the woodwork and the construction of the table itself. All right, here we have the completed base unit with the speaker and the power installed. Just a power line going through it. That's a 2-amp circuit breaker. So now we just hook up the wires, plug in the power. Now you can see why I have a power plug there, so that you can connect the base to the upper unit. That. Wires all stay clear of each other. Sweet. It's made it a little smaller this time. Or last time I just sanded. Yeah. That's good, unfortunate. So now we just screw the bottom in. And there you go, with these screws and a little bit of work, the table's all assembled, and you're good to go. Now I'm going to talk about attaching the glass top to the plexiglass cover. And you'll see here I have the plexiglass cover, which has already been made. This one was made by the source that Olszewski lists in his website. This one's been made a special height. I think this is 6 and well, I'll give the exact measurement on the screen there. But it's been made lower because it's obviously going to be a coffee table. Now I've had a piece of 3/8 inch plate glass cut for me. This one was done by Wilson Glass in Berkeley. The glass I use is 3/8. It's quite heavy. I just like the look of the 3/8 glass, even though it's quite heavy. I've had holes cut into the sides of the piece in order to connect it to the plexiglass. And I'm going to use these fasteners to attach it. These are available broadly. This is a 1 1/4 inch fastener, and later I'll show you how the bolts on. It's real easy. But these 4, 1 in each corner fasteners are going to hold the glass to the top, to the plexiglass top. I like using the glass on top because the plexiglass is way too fragile for a coffee table. It would scar up in a matter of weeks. It also adds a little bit of drama to the table, I think. It really helps draw attention to the collection, I think, and the fact that it's really designed to be a coffee table, not just some kind of display piece. So I like that. The glass is not cheap. This piece cost me $400 to have made, and that's on top of the 400 and some odd for the plexiglass itself. So this is the single most expensive unit on the display. I think it's the single most important. Again, my philosophy on the top is that on the whole display is to make the collection as visible and as compelling as possible. So I like the idea of a completely transparent top that's sturdy and will hold up over time. So that's why you see the top laid out this way. Now I've placed the glass top on top of the plexiglass, and I've marked where the holes go because I'm going to cut these holes out in a minute. Some things to remember is that your plexiglass guys, when they fabricate the top, they're almost never square. This one's off by about 1/16 as it runs along the edge here. And so I've had the glass fabricators cut to match the plexiglass, because for some reason my glass fabricators are able to do angles much more accurately than the plexiglass guys. So have your glass cut to the plexiglass. Just don't get after Armando if he's not square, because he never is. It's just something about the way they cut him that they just never come out square. There's plenty of slack in the way the table is built, so that won't be a factor. But just beware of that. With that, so I've got this marked. Now I'm going to cut these holes out here in a second. All right, now we're going to cut the hole in here, and the hole has to be big enough for the stud to go through, and really no bigger. The complicated thing about cutting plexiglass is that it shatters very easily. And so they do make drills that are specially made for plexiglass. They have a much longer taper to them, but I don't have one, and I just find it safer to use a Dremel and to cut your way through it. Now this is a special, just a cutting bit, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down through the piece, and hopefully the Dremel will work. I'm just going to go down through the piece and then broaden the hole out to fit the stud and stay right in the center of the line. Okay, there we go. So that's really all there is to it. I mean, like I say, I like to use bits like this. It's not really bits, it's just a cutter. You know, I like to use that because there's no chance of shattering the plexiglass, and it makes a big enough hole. The hole doesn't have to be particularly clean. You just want to make it to be just barely bigger than the threads, just so the thing will just barely fit through, so you get a nice snug fit with the holder in the hole. So just repeat that process for the 4 corners, and then we move on to the next step. All right, so I'm just wrapping up the preparation for the next step by cutting off about ½ an inch of the protective paper that covers the plexiglass. You probably noticed that I'm leaving the paper backing, protecting layer on the plexiglass until the last possible moment. Because the plexiglass will never be cleaner than it is when you pull this protective paper off. So we're going to leave this protective cover on right until the second that we connect it to the glass plate, and save ourselves a lot of drama later. So now this next step is optional, but I strongly recommend it, and I'll explain why here in a second. All right, like I said, this step is optional, but I want to show you why we're doing it and what it does. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be installing this gasket material on the edge between the plastic and the glass, and it's going to form a seal between the 2 layers. Now, this particular table didn't have the seal, and I learned quickly why that was a bad idea. I didn't realize that when somebody spilled something on the table, that the fluids would go down the side and immediately wick in between the sheet of glass and the sheet of plastic, and sometimes it would go, you know, almost a foot up into the table, and so you had to disassemble the top to clean it. That was a bad enough problem and enough reason for the gasket. But the second reason for the gasket is that over time, and this table has been around for about 5 years, is over time dust and other debris somehow gets in between the layer of the plexiglass and the layer of glass, and it's pretty unsightly. So for both those reasons, I really strongly recommend you putting in this gasket material. It's kind of a pain in the neck, but it'll save you a lot of grief later, so I'll show you how that goes. Installing the gasket material is a 2-step process. The gaskets don't come with an adhesive, so you have to stick them down to the plexiglass. And there's probably better ways to do this, but what I've been using is this special transparent tape designed for sticking down this kind of material. It sticks really good to the plexiglass. I tell you, it doesn't stick so good to the silicon, but really all it's got to do is hold it in place for you to get the glass on, so it doesn't have to be all that sticky. So I've gone around the perimeter with the tape, and just peel off the backing and then stick down the gasket. Now, when you put down the gasket, when you look down the side of the table, you can kind of see it on this edge here. If you look closely, see if I can zoom in here a little bit. You can actually see the lower piece of plexiglass. You can, because it's 3/8 of an inch wide, you can actually look down and see the edges of it. And I like to put this gasket material just on the inside edge of that material, but you don't want it to hang out the edge, because when the glass flattens it out, it actually gets slightly wider, and you don't want it to be squish out, oh, sorry, my hand was in the way again. When you push down, when the glass pushes down, the gasket material is going to squish out the edges a little bit. So you don't want the gasket material so close to the edge of the plastic that it's going to squish out the side when it gets compressed. So that's why I leave it in from the side just a little bit when you stick it down. So that's really all there is to it. Oh yeah. And when you go to put down this stuff, zoom back again. When you go to put down this material, you have a tendency to want to stretch it to get it to lay down flat. Don't do that. Don't try to stretch it. Leave it relaxed. Otherwise it won't stick to the tape. It'll just pop right off. So leave it relaxed, indent it a little bit from the side. Not even 45-degree the angles so they fit in, and then your gasket material is installed. All right, so I'll do a couple inches here for you so you can kind of see what happens. It's really just kind of straightforward. You just lay it in there and push it down. Now when you put down the double-sided tape, you'll find that it doesn't want to be lifted off at all. Once you get it down on the plexiglass, it wants to stay there. But this stuff will come off pretty easily if you make a mistake. That's the good news. Bad news is it comes off easily no matter what, so you have to be pretty careful with it. And here you see the table fully assembled with the glass attached to the plexi, with the 4 screws attached. All the gaskets are installed. The top's been put on the table. Obviously some other work has been done, but I think the whole coffee table comes out pretty good. And you can see it all together here.